Grammar Girl here. I'm Mignon Fogarty, and you can think of me as your friendly guide to the English language, writing, history, rules, and cool stuff. Today, I have a segment about how to get started as a freelance writer, a tidbit about the word adventure, and a funny Familect story. Let's get started. Around this time of year, as new college graduates are hitting the cold reality of the working world, I start getting questions about how to find work as a writer. How did I get started? What advice can I share? When I got my undergraduate degree in English, I had no idea how to get a job. None. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, so getting the degree was the big goal for me. Nobody gave me much career counseling, and I didn't know enough to look for it myself. I struggled to find a job, and I was really close to having to move back home to live with my parents. I worked in direct sales for a while and then landed a job at an insurance brokerage owned by my friend's father. They were nice people, and I was incredibly grateful to have a job, and I liked working there, but it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. At the same time, I had a friend who had just graduated with a political science degree and had started working for political groups and writing pieces that were getting placed in newspapers. I was astonished. I was the writer. I was the one who had written for the school paper in high school and college. Upon reflection, I decided his biggest advantage was that he had a niche, politics. He had something to write about, and I didn't. It took me many more years and a roundabout path, but I finally ended up with a master's in biology and as much work as I could handle as a science writer and editor. Learning to write about something complicated turned out to be an especially great edge because not many people can understand medicine and biology and write well. You actually don't need an advanced degree to become a science writer, or, I imagine, a writer in any complicated field. But if you're just starting out, immersing yourself in a difficult field so you can write about it intelligently and with insight is a path I recommend. You'll have less competition, and these tend to be smaller universes. So once you get a little experience, it'll be easier to network. When you're just getting started, you need to look for an opening. For me, a laboratory fire at UC Santa Cruz was my first big break. It got me my first freelance writing assignment for the magazine The Scientist. I heard about the fire from a friend on campus, and I immediately cold called the editorial offices at The Scientist. Because I already read the magazine, I was pretty sure it'd be the kind of thing they'd run. My main pitching point was that I was physically in Santa Cruz, that I could go up to campus, see what was going on, interview people, take pictures, and write about it quickly. They said yes and didn't even ask about my experience. And because I did a good job, my next pitches were welcome, and writing for The Scientist became a regular gig. One implied tip in that story is that you should be regularly reading the publications you want to write for. You have to know what they've already covered, so you don't look clueless pitching something they just ran. And you have to be familiar with the tone and scope of the stories, so you pitch pieces that are appropriate. Another strategy that's tied to geography is to offer to cover conferences in your hometown or that you'll be attending anyway. This works especially well for trade magazines that may be interested in the event but not have the budget to send someone. If you're going to be there anyway, it's a good way to get your foot in the door without a lot of experience. Joining writing and trade associations is another way to find out about opportunities. When I was starting out as a science writer, I joined the National Association of Science Writers and later the American Medical Writers Association. You should frequent the discussion groups or social media pages and go to the events and meet the people. It really is true that a large part of getting a job or getting new clients or assignments is who you know. A lot of opportunities are never posted anywhere. If you're shy and have a hard time making small talk, volunteer to help in some way. You could set up the room, contact potential speakers, anything that gives you a reason to talk to people. Also, give people physical business cards. It makes you harder to forget. At the very least, people will probably put your card in their pocket or bag and think of you again when they take it out after the event. And you never know, they might keep the card and see it on their desk or in a drawer when they need help in the future. Another way to get your foot in the door is to write when nobody else wants to. Look hard for work around the holidays. Many established writers will turn down work in December, but people still need things written. These days, I'd definitely turn down work because of the holidays. But when I was just getting started, I picked up a lot of new assignments and new clients in November and December. Another good time of year to put your search in overdrive is at the end of a fiscal year. Big companies and government agencies often have money left at the end of the fiscal year, and if they don't spend it, they lose it. Find out when the fiscal year ends for people you want to work for and drop them a line or call them to say hello around that time. I picked up lots of work from people who found themselves with money to spend and only a couple of weeks to spend it. Also, when you're just getting started, don't be afraid to ask for help and advice. You have nothing to lose but a little dignity, and you'll probably even get to keep that. Right after I graduated, I met a couple of people at a party who freelanced for the local newspaper. I wanted to ask them for introductions and advice, but I was too afraid. In reality, I was being ridiculous. What did I have to lose? Maybe they would have thought I was annoying, but I never saw them again anyway. More likely, they would have loved to talk about their jobs and pass on bits of useful information. Most people love to talk about their work, and if you're not pressuring them to give you a job or an introduction immediately, they're usually happy to give you advice, which can start out as general advice but become more specific if they like you. Finally, once you get assignments, move heaven and earth to do a good job. It's absolutely shocking how many writers miss their deadlines. Make your deadlines. Author Mur Lafferty said this best on a panel at the WorldCon conference about writing games, but it applies to all writing situations. If you get a reputation for being dependable, you're more likely to get work. Even if you're not the most brilliant writer editors know, if they know you'll turn in decent work on time, you're much more likely to get hired than the brilliant writer who's always late. It all comes back to who you know, and that can work for or against you. Build a reputation as a solid, dependable writer, and after a few years, work will be a lot easier to find. Finally, I came across a great book about freelancing a few years ago called The Essential Guide to Freelance Writing by Zachary Pettit. I never taught freelance writing when I was a college professor, but if I had, it's the book I would have used. It's full of advice like I just gave you from my own experience and much more. Today's show is sponsored by an innovative financial firm called Aspiration. Aspiration doesn't want to be like the big banks, where high fees are common and your deposits can be used to help the bank invest in oil pipelines and other unsustainable practices. With Aspiration, you get more money in your pocket and more power to do good. They offer a 2% annual percentage yield, 0 ATM fees anywhere in the world, and the option to choose your own monthly fee, even if it's 0. Plus, 10% of Aspiration's earnings go to charity, and they give cash-back rewards for shopping at socially conscious businesses. That's why Aspiration's been featured in Forbes, The New York Times, and Money Magazine. Everyone deserves a financial firm that helps you make more money while making a difference. Put your money where your heart is. Download the Aspiration app to open an account, earn 2% annual interest, pay 0 ATM fees, and save the planet while you're at it. Aspiration. Download the app today. This episode was also supported by Columbia University School of General Studies. If you're ready for a new challenge and to join the collaborative, competitive community of Ivy League students, you can pursue your passion at Columbia University School of General Studies. You'll study under world-renowned faculty, take advantage of research-backed support programs, and find mentors dedicated to meeting the unique needs of non-traditional students. GS students possess real-world experience. They've already had careers or started families, and now obtaining an Ivy League college education is their next milestone. It's time to explore your passion and potential. Earn your prestigious degree from Columbia University. To discover how you can continue your story, visit gs.columbia.edu/podcast. The fall regular decision application deadline is June 1st. Apply today. That's gs.columbia.edu/podcast. Next, let's go on an etymological adventure written by Christopher Golden. I'm sometimes fascinated to discover common words whose origins are not precisely what I had assumed. One of them in particular always puts me in mind of a favorite quote from The Princess Bride. "You keep using that word, but I do not think it means what you think it means." The word adventure is used so broadly that it's often taken for granted. Colloquially, many associate it with an exciting journey, but when contemplating its etymology, the natural instinct suggests its closest cousin might be advent, from the Latin adventus. Yet while the words are certainly related, they're more like distant cousins than siblings. While it's true that adventure was born later, it's derived from the Latin advenire. Following the roots deeper, the words share etymological DNA, as advenire means to arrive. But by instead moving forward with them, following the branches instead of the roots, we find further separation. The use of Advent to describe the 4-week season leading up to Christmas on the Christian calendar goes back to the 12th century. But its usage to refer to an onset or arrival, such as the advent of the industrial age, didn't enter the language until the mid-18th century. The word adventure, without the D, entered the lexicon around 1200 CE, borrowed from Old French and used to refer to something that happened by chance or luck. An understanding of adventure as something rife with risk and danger developed about a century later, and by 1400 CE, the common understanding of adventure as a perilous undertaking had taken hold. Later, in the 15th century, the D was restored to the word, and it settled into our modern spelling. Following this evolution, it seems clear that adventure was neither inspired by the 12th century religious usage of Advent, or to have in turn inspired the 18th century onset of Advent. Thus, adventure is not the beginning of the journey, but the perilous travels themselves. I confess I once assumed otherwise. This leads me to an element of the word's origin that many recountings of its etymology manage to leave out, which is remarkable given its pertinence. In the 13th century, adventure could be taken to mean a miracle or an account of a marvelous thing. By the mid-16th century, the word could also be construed to refer to a remarkable occurrence in one's life. Perhaps it's no surprise then that adventure became a label attached to a particular genre of fiction from the earliest days of popular literature. Tales of heroic adventure date back to the advent of the written word, not only to Greek myth, but to the earliest known fictional story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which first appeared around 2100 BCE. Gilgamesh begat a million heroes and heroines and infinite adventures, particularly in the golden age of the adventure novel in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, which featured tales by legendary authors such as Edgar Rice Burroughs, Alexander Dumas, H. Rider Haggard, Rudyard Kipling, Herman Melville, Robert Louis Stevenson, Jules Verne, Baroness Orczy, and Jack London, who emphasized the theme with the title of his 1911 novel, Adventure. That, of course, is only the beginning of the adventure of adventure. That segment was written by New York Times bestselling author Christopher Golden, a Bram Stoker award-winning novelist, as well as a screenwriter, editor, and comic book writer. His latest novel, The Pandora Room, is a supernatural thriller that turns ancient lore into a modern-day horror. Finally, I have a Familect story from Alan. I love his enthusiasm.
Hi, Mignon. This is Alan Stout from Cedar Hill, Utah. I have a Familect that I thought you might enjoy. Several years ago, when I was attending Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, my aunt and uncle, with whom I lived at the time, were driving by Provo High School. The three of us together were driving by, and we looked up at the marquee as we passed the high school, and it had the strangest word we had ever seen. It was hoopsatorum, Hoopsatorem, hoopsatorum. Not even Dr. Seuss, for all his whimsical brilliance, could have invented a word as terrific as hoopsatorum. But what did it mean? We had no idea what it could possibly mean, and we puzzled over it until we realized that it was a reference to the upcoming basketball game at Orem High School, between Provo High School and Orem High School. It was hoops at Orem, hoopsatorum. And we all laughed, and it immediately and permanently became part of our family's own dialect. And we adopted it as the superlative of congratulatory or celebratory words. I just got a new job. Hoopsatorum, Alan. My little sister literally just yesterday had a baby. Yes, she literally had a baby, meaning she had a baby just yesterday. And what did I text her on my family's group thread? Hoopsatorum. And my older sister, a couple weeks ago, she got a new job. And what did I text her? Hoopsatorum. My phone is even starting to recognize that I'm using this word with some frequency because I just have to type HOO and it recommends hoopsatorum. I hope you've enjoyed this story about this terrific word that can be used in all sorts of contexts. It doesn't have to be for matters large. It can be for matters small. We're having pizza for dinner tonight? Hoopsatorum. So I hope that you select this for your show, for I know that if I were to, and if I were to tell my word-loving family about that, they would certainly congratulate me in the only way they know how. Hoopsatorum.
Well, all I can say is hoopsatorum, Alan, and thanks for the great story. If you'd like to share your Familect story, the story about a word that your family and only your family uses, you can leave a voicemail at 83321-4GIRL. And be sure to tell me why your family uses the word, because that's always the best part of the story. That's 83321-4GIRL, and you might hear your story on the show. I'm Mignon Fogarty, better known as Grammar Girl, and author of 7 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Grammar Girl's Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing. And thanks to my audio producer, Nathan Sams. This show is part of the Quick and Dirty Tips podcast network, and you can find articles that go with each episode at quickanddirtytips.com. That's all. Thanks for listening.